Thank you, Supriya. And I think that's the same from my side as well. I'm really glad that after seeing so many kind of eminent, interviews which you're being interacting with, the people you're interacting with, those sessions were really insightful. And I think the same would be expected from the same. And we wish that, the audience also enjoys the entire aspect which we cover up today. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. That means a lot. Dr. Ravi, let me just get to the conversation that we want to have with you today, right? Generative AI. I mean, every single person is talking about it. And, there are reports that are doing the rounds that generative AI has actually reached the peak of its hype cycle. And, now people want to know, will it really drop off the peak, the hype cycle, or, what applications does it have when it comes to enterprises and organizations? So according to you, what are some of the significant disruptions that generative AI is currently bringing in the tech industry, and how do these changes impact both enterprises and consumers?
So Priya, that's very close to my heart because yesterday also I have, sent my publication in terms of how exactly generative AI is going to take the shape now with respect to Industry 5.0, that perspective. So definitely, yes, I'll be discussing step by step what exactly is the kind of the future around it and what we have achieved so far. So when I say I was working on a publication, it was submitted to Forbes and it's going to be there in the market within a couple of days. And therein I'm talking about generative physical AI. So it's an integration of physical AI. So I'll discuss what physical AI is, and then generative AI empowering that particular aspect. So physical AI is more from the mechanical aspect, which covers up the machines, robots, and everything. When the power of generative AI is being leveraged over there, we will be seeing, instead of working on bot frameworks altogether, it will be cobots, which is collaborative bot framework, which will be working in the coming days. People have started working on that, but right now it was more of a kind of a armed bots. But now you can see that rovers would be created, and I was lucky enough, that last day our team filed a patent on the same. So we are very shortly coming up with a kind of a generative physical AI based, a kind of a collaborative bot which can interact within the retail domain, understand the data environment, understand the entire environment with the camera, with IoT devices, with respect to the the speech, and it will be interacting with us because it has got a layer of large language model operations over there. So that would be a kind of a interactive bot framework which exactly would be coming up from the mechanized aspect. So it is like robotics plus bot framework. So that would be the next wave from the generative physical AI perspective. Yeah. And if I talk about the other applications, it would be helping industrial control systems, inspection of manufacturing units, working in farmlands. So therein we are having our own IPs in terms of how exactly we can have that particular platform ready with the mobile application, with a web application, and with a robo, which exactly goes to the farm, takes the insights, take some pictures and say that, hey, this particular plant, is having this disease. You need to quickly order these medicine, and this is the nearby vendor who is supplying this drug, let's say the pesticide or whatever the kind of, the medicine the plant requires. It can be there. You can just imagine for a kind of a manufacturing unit where we can identify the kind of the stocks which are required, maybe the kind of inventory management perspective. It could be the pilferage analysis, or it could be any kind of, alarming thing which we need to work out. Predictive maintenance is going to really come up with its own version of Industry 5.0 maturity. I hope that answers your first question, right?
Yes, Dr. Ravi, that sounds rather exciting, if I may say. I mean, generative AI combined with physical, bots. That's something, of course. I mean, we'd love to look forward to that. So you mentioned getting actionable insights, right? And we hear about generative AI models hallucinating and things like that quite a lot. So how can sort of businesses ensure that, generative AI yields insightful and actionable outcomes rather than, generic insights?
So there are two ways to it. One is the strategic perspective to it. So we need to have proper governance so that they don't deviate a lot. When I say that there would be a governance, it means there would be a mechanism in place that becomes operational activity from a strategic perspective. So what exactly we need to do over there is we need to set up certain KPIs from the subject matter perspective, from functional aspect of the application which you're working upon, and also the business KPIs. Aligning them all together, keeping a track on what output we are generating from the generative engine, that would be helping us to prevent not only the hallucination, but also if there is an hallucination, the GenAI engine itself would say that, hey, here is what I'm hallucinating upon. there's my scoring, and now I need a human in the loop. So even that mechanism we have sorted out internally for our projects, for our external clients as well. So that's a kind of a metric-based evaluations which we can do. That is a monitoring part. And basis that monitoring, we come to know that there is a hallucination. The model may require further fine-tunings. We can have reinforcement learning layer, again, on the custom data which we have. So it's not only running at the back end, the generative AI engine, they already have a reinforcement learning layer, the RLHF framework we need to have right now on our custom data as well. So that actually has a reward and penalty mechanism. So it gets tuned to the errors and accuracies automatically, and it's an AI agent again helping you to safeguard your failures of the entire engine to give the response. So I can take it in detail if you want. Otherwise, if any other question is lying at, discuss that.
Great, Dr. Ravi. That gives me a lot of clarity, on the matter, and thank you for sharing that. Could you also sort of share with us how generative AI is shifting business operations from static workflows to a more adaptive system?
So when it comes to static versus the adaptive framework, right? The first thing we need to understand is, earlier we were having an opinion that it will be just good for autonomous tasks. It won't be that much creative in terms of generating the responses. So when it comes to adaptive framework, it is more of understanding the environment, learning the environment, and then responding or reacting upon it. So when I say reaction or response, you know that there is a thin line of a difference over there. When my response is going to be more proactive, more aggressive, it becomes a reaction. And definitely, yes, we can have those frameworks now within GenAI capability. How do we do that is a different thing, because it depend on industry, use case to use case. But there are certain mechanisms which you can put in place to make it more adaptive. One of the previous workaround which I said on reinforcement learning based RLHF layer, whereas human feedback is also involved. So that way we can bring in those kind of adaptive mechanisms. So for example, let me create a particular agent which exactly scans your documents, right? It generates insight upon it. And now this documentation, automation of documentation is very much in place. Earlier it was natural language processing, and then now we have GenAI maturity models. Now what we need to do is, this subject matter experts who I'm talking about, maybe the research scientist. What now we can do is, basis their ongoing project, so there could be obviously a kind of a business response documentation in place or their requirements in place. The GenAI engine would be scanning their actual requirements, the project-based workouts, the kind of the agile practice, what they're having, we can integrate to that. And basis that kind of understanding on the business use case, the bot, or let's say the agent, can then scan the document and can give the right way of the outputs to the research scientist. So it could be that, hey, in this entire research work which I'm referring to, what novelty was identified. So research gap is already discussed there by the GenAI bot. It can also help you to even foresee what exactly could be the next level of interactions between molecule if it's like into the drug discovery. It could suggest you that in the societal dealings, this was the model which was which was being publicized by a number of research workers. But now when it comes to the current level of let's say practice, we can even foresee the kind of next steps, that if I want to make the corrections in the previous research gaps, how exactly it could be done. So those kinds of outputs also we can definitely generate. It's only the thing is that now the subject matter experts who are there need to prompt engineer it. Than the AI engineer or prompt engineers do that. Now it's the let's say the imperative role of all the subject matter experts, be it doctors, be it physicians, to their the kind of the supervisors from manufacturing units. They can customize it from their side. So that's where I think it would be more adaptive, and the response which it's going to generate it more dynamic in nature as per the environment we are talking about. So it requires contextualization in the entire scenario.
Dr. Ravi, this does seem impressive. However, a business environment, right? You cannot really predict. Sometimes there are unexpected situations. Speaking about reactive response, how do you feel that adaptive AI systems handle unexpected changes in business environments when compared to the traditional static workflows?
So when it comes to adaptive versus traditional workflows, that traditional, as you mentioned clearly, that these are static workflows which are rigid. They rely on predefined rules and processes, and they make it difficult to adapt to certain changes. That's even I'm agreeing. When it comes to adaptive AI systems, this could continuously learn from new data, right? Now I'll be saying that, hey, the scenario is uncertain, right? So how exactly the data would be identified? So when I say that I'm going to work out on, let's say, uncertainties, in business language, it is known as risk. Now the bot is aware what a risk management framework is. So what it does, it looks for volatility. What volatility? The business scenario, whatever we are dealing with, it could be stock price, prediction model. It could be, as I mentioned, drug discovery process. So it identifies what could be volatile. In finance, it could be, the cash reserves which you're talking about. We are taking a decision, to have investments in fixed assets for a long term. We are going to come up with equity framework, whatever. In that decision making process, what it does is, this will be going back, asking you that, can you provide me certain variables which I can, include in my risk management perspective. So there you can see that it can even model those risk aspects within the particular, the predictive environment, and can give you the results of what is the risk exposure. Because you mentioned, when it is something which is going to change, it means there is this uncertainty. When there is uncertainty, there is a variable or a component involved which is uncertain. We need to keep a track on that, and basis that we need to risk model it. So enterprise risk, it could be market risk, it would be your product failure risk, it could be any risk. So we need to identify those KPIs, metrics. We just need to predict that. Even in predicting, the data analysis part and all is involved. Anomaly detection can be done. And these days, to our surprise, anomalies can be detected even with qualitative prompts. It is not requiring that much of quantified information, or better right now, we can use a hybrid model, somewhat on quantitative measures, somewhat on qualitative measures. That's how exactly it becomes more adaptive, learn from the environment. Not only that, it suggests you that how much is your risk exposure. Basis that risk exposure, you can then decide whether I want to take that step or not.
That sounds very, very impressive and intimidating at the same time. I mean, it's great that AI can do all of this, but it also means that it negates the need for human intervention, or very little human intervention is concerned. So this will be interesting whenever it comes, on a full-fledged manner. Speaking of, more about AI, what challenges do companies face when integrating AI into their strategic planning processes?
So the major challenge is the kind of, it can further be divided into multiple aspects. There are some strategy challenges which are involved, which are more from the long-term vision perspective. So it is setting up the governance mechanism, identifying what could be the potential use cases we should work upon. That is the first dilemma. How exactly GenAI could be leveraged in their ecosystem? That particular questions are not yet answered by so many organizations, industries. Even we are, as a part and parcel of our certain services, we are offering those kind of consulting aspects, that how exactly we can identify what could be the ROIs which are directly attached to the kind of projects which we are going to work out. So that's more strategic in nature. It requires the brainstorming from the CXOs and let's say the upper business units. And if I talk about the functional aspects, or let's say the business functions, they have their own challenges of integrating AI or generative AI based mechanisms into their ecosystem. It could be because of data integration aspects, it could be because of third party data connectors which need to be leveraged, or a kind of a ERP system which is in place, but they need to understand that how exactly this integration would work. So customizing those integrations, I think, would be the functional units challenges. When it comes to very much operational, that is day-to-day aspects, automation is the other aspect which we need to work out. And there, people are getting confused with workflow automation versus GenAI based automation which they are going to work out. So RPA along with GenAI with the basic the mechanisms, that's the awareness which is required at that moment, that how exactly they can shift from one system to another, or it could be a cohesive environment which could be a hybrid system as well. The last thing which exactly is a part of the operational challenges, the skill gap. So not every industry is having those skill sets which are required for this entire aspect. As I mentioned that from the large language model operation perspective, we need MLOps engineers who already understand that how exactly this entire CI/CD pipeline works, and how exactly we can monitor the GenAI agents, how we can prevent hallucinations, how can we monitor the drifts from the output which is coming from a bot, and versus we can compare that quantitatively with respect to the humans, which are subject matter experts, and then apply a reinforcement learning layer over there to automate further process. So I think these are the major challenges which any organization is facing right now. The other constraints could be the budget constraints, the time, and the speed with the automation is happening. You are seeing that most of the industries, most of the business offerings are becoming dead. And even if you talk about web designing these days, it's like prompt oriented, right? So we can get those Figma designs, all these things, with very ease. And that really is a matter of concern, that instead of, having a fear factor that this would eat up my job, rather everybody should be aligned that how can I integrate GenAI into my current workaround, and I can upskill myself.
So, Dr. Ravi, you mentioned brainstorming with the CXOs and the leadership, right? And now AI is everywhere, all across, the business processes. So, would you say that, strategic AI leadership is crucial for business transformation? I mean, we've heard of chief digital officers, chief data officers. So, is is a role of a chief AI officer required at this point?
Very much indeed, actually. So if I talk about chief AI officer as a service, or maybe chief AI officer as a kind of a job description over there within a company, it is basically a kind of a, I'll not call it as an individual person who is actually doing this. It's a council which is coming all together. So with a person who is chief AI officer comes the AI council, comes the steering committee, comes the stewardship, and with that they are going to envision how exactly we can integrate the business unit and the technological adoptions and adaptations, etc., to counter, the kind of the challenges which are going to face in future with respect to the speedy growth globally. So when I say that, it means now the chief AI officers are going to pave the way forward to set up the pathway for 20 years down the line of the business transformations. Very soon, as I mentioned, Industry 5.0 is going to, be a kind of a coming in a way wherein it would be disrupting the entire economies, right? As I mentioned, the collaborative bot framework, machine customers these days, like we are not going to deal with humans, we are going to deal with those machines who are actually negotiating with us in making buying decisions, right? As of now, it's like when you talk about drop shipping kind of environment where autonomous sellers are there, you'll be seeing that autonomous buyers are there, and then you see how exactly the negotiation would be happening and who wins over there. That's again very tricky because you're one GenAI engine dealing with the other one. So in that grounds, it's very imperative that chief AI officer comes with a visionary aspect. They envision your business use cases. They envision your future, let's say, strategies to improvise, to maximize shareholders' wealth, because we cannot avoid those three aspects of business to maximize or improve, optimize the shareholders' wealth, to have business growth, and lastly to have sustainability, because the most important aspect within any business is the life of the business, as I always say that. So to add to the life of a business, these visionary leaders would be helping to set up the steering committees, as I mentioned, the strategic units, which will be taking care of every business function, right from logistics, supply chain, retail, marketing, let's say if I talk about the OEMs, the production, manufacturing activities, and aligning them to the customer demands, because the customer is also going to be learned, right, that what could be the next wave of my wishes which can get fulfilled these days. Think of the creative units like photographers, think of Hollywood directors. They already would be working with Sora kind of a platform, and they can generate those kind of fancy videos within no time, and they can have that script also ready with them, which exactly would be a kind of a it would be like the fiction and reality. So that would be the next challenge to deal with. So real fiction, how exactly we're gonna deal with those kind of aspects, that completely requires a turnaround, things with respect to the business transformations. So not only from the creative fields, but also from the scientific fields. Today, if I want to, let's say, work on a rover, right? I can take the help of GitHub Copilot platforms like that. I can cut down on my time limit, which I was spending a lot in my development process. So time, money, efforts, everything getting affected. My human assets getting affected. So definitely we need to plan it in such a way that globally it's going to be a sound, let's say, adaptation, because it will be impacting the society in either ways. It could be positive also, it could be negative also. And we need to understand that we need to leverage AI for social good, because if that is not being captured, there is no point in using AI. So if AI is making our life complex, there is no point in using or leveraging AI at all. So therefore, this spearheading, leaders, they will be paving the way forward, aligning the society together and bringing the frameworks wherein the best-in-class AI for good practices can be there for the customers, for internal customers, for external customers, for the stakeholders like the government, the financial system, because that needs to keep moving on. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does, Dr. Ravi. And in one of the earlier points, you mentioned cost optimization as one of the challenges for AI adoption, right? And this is a question that we get asked a lot. When we speak about generative AI, mostly people talk about the content generation aspect of it, and the predictive analytics and automation. When it comes to AI, not just generative AI. So it is a fairly expensive technology to invest in, and there's a shortage of GPUs, along with other challenges. So what would you say? I mean, why should companies or organizations adopt this technology? What are some of the significant ways in which general AI is expected to transform different industry sectors? And can you highlight some of the innovative applications of general AI apart from data analysis and automation?
Exactly. So it's very timely, the thing which we are discussing all these aspects, because if I talk about some of our recent developments, what we have done is we have leveraged Gen AI along with, let's say, the general AI principles to even devise a framework which reduces digital waste, right? So we are working with our clients in reducing digital waste by identifying the right set of mechanisms by which we can scan the entire cloud platforms, what kind of data assets we have, what kind of computes we are running, what kind of efforts, time, money and efforts, everything goes there in development. Where the machines are idle, where exactly I'm having anomalies coming from. Basis those anomalies, then we are, recommending that, hey, you can reduce your digital waste by so and so units, and it saves you that much. And that saving can be further utilized for building your R&D fund to get into these kind of practices. Because we cannot come back now and we cannot withdraw generative AI, because that's going to be very much a part and parcel of any offering in our future services. And any organization, even if I talk about, is not going to be sustainable after 3 years if they don't have any generic or generative AI principles in place. So that's the first thing I need to address. Second thing is when it comes to the optimization perspective, as I mentioned very clearly, there are ways and means by which we can definitely optimize even the usage of Gen AI into our ecosystem, just I mentioned, right? So if we can reduce digital waste, we can also reduce that time, money, efforts wherein we are going off the track when we are leveraging any kind of use case with Gen AI. But for that, we need sincere efforts strategically that we need to identify basis the complexity of the problem I'm going to resolve, what capability I have internally. And basis those aspects, those metrics, we need to identify what are the golden opportunities which I can work upon, where I have to leverage, let's say, more of my internal capabilities than going to third parties and vendors over there. And I can upskill my team over there for, the entire business scenario, and can leverage Gen AI to the level best so that it can help me to automate, it can help me to get those recommendations which earlier I was not able to do that in a simple way, because not every human comes with the same intellect. They have their diversified opinion, and therefore there are hierarchies. The only thing which is agnostic to generative AI is doesn't take care of any hierarchy, any designation. It can work like your subordinate, it can quickly act like your colleague, it can quickly, I don't want to tell the last thing, right? So that's it. I think it's well understood.
It's well understood, Dr. Ravi. Thank you. So Ravi, Dr. Ravi, considering everything we've discussed right now, right, I want to understand about Compunnel. How is Compunnel positioned to help businesses navigate the complexities of, generative AI ecosystem? I mean, you mentioned quite a lot of them. And what can we expect from you on this front?
So I would like to again mention the facts and figures first, and then I can showcase that, how exactly we are spearheading in terms of generative AI, and not only that, in AI and cybersecurity, what are our footprints. So when I got associated with Forbes Technology Council, right, we are already having a number of clients working in dimensions of predictive maintenance side, industrial IoT frameworks. We're working with banking systems, we're working with pharmaceutical firms, wherein we are already employing the kind of, the generic AI practices. In the wave of 2020s, wherein we were having the kind of fabulous infrastructures by the GPT models, by large language models, apart from OpenAI. So we got a understanding that, hey, this is going to be a next wave of AI, and basis that what we thought of is that we now need to capitalize this into quicker opportunities, not only for us, majorly for our clients, and how quickly we can integrate with their existing businesses, wherein we are already dealing with them. So Compunnel comes with a huge track record in terms of long-term relationship with the clients. We have decade-long, clients relationships, and so what we did initially was to help them first on a priority that they, whatever the system we are working upon with them, whatever the technologies we are, using for their particular, business development aspects, from the application development to web application framework to it could be, the digital solutions which you are offering. Everything is having AI component over there, from minuscule to, let's say, large application developments, whatever. And then what we have seen is that, yes, we have got those particular confidences from the client that they are responding well in terms of the return on investment they are having with us. And definitely that boosted our confidence. We came up with 40 plus different accelerators altogether in a year's time. And then we publicized few of them. Also, we showcase them to, some of the major platforms. And very soon we are going to deal with certain platforms where we are going to globally exhibit from the UN AI for Good Practice perspective. So now I'm also into the other council wherein I'm representing Compunnel. So let's say last week we were discussing with honorable, personalities like Steve from, Intel. He's basically CTO there, looking into the federal business. We had Joe, who's having almost 40 plus years of experience in, industrial control systems. We have Carlo, is having, let's say, almost 20-30 years of experience dealing with AI for Good kind of initiatives from the UN ambassador perspective. So we were working on those particular lines so that we can have resilient systems in place. We can have a global task force for AI. So when I say global task force for AI cybersecurity, what we are doing there is we are coming up with ways and means so that we can safeguard the interest of society at large, the nature, the mother nature, altogether. Whatever the solutions we bring in, we ensure that it is green AI implementation over there. Compunnel stands with those kind of perspectives. And at the same time, how exactly we can have, let's say, Gen AI based, kind of cybersecurity mechanisms to understand social engineering in a better way, to understand how exactly we can secure our client businesses, those kind of initiatives were there. Then came the way of, n number of innovative use cases to our front. Like some of our clients even requested that, hey, can we just have automated data engineers so that they can migrate our, existing ecosystem into the another platform, and that too with, let's say, latest innovations in, let's say, from the Microsoft side, if we talk about Microsoft Fabric. So how exactly we can have Data World 2.0 based, integrations within Microsoft Fabric, and that is to be done by a kind of a system that is completely automated. So these kind of initiatives helping us, to sail through. And not only that, we are steering the entire units of the clients, the let's say the economy, the entire economies, because we are also dealing with governments these days. So we have been coming out with those kind of innovations wherein we can help education, we can help farming, we can help the government. So that's the EFG model which we have in place, separately dealing only for AI for good practices and initiatives. So a lot many things, right from farming equipment manufacturers to aerospace engineering. I think we have dealt with a number of use cases like that. So that's where Compunnel is going to shape the entire future of how generative AI, generative physical AI, and let's say the artificial intelligence in general could be leveraged for a societal good. So that's the motivation and motto behind that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi. I mean, this was an extremely insightful interview, right? And it was technical, but I understood everything that you were saying. And I've learned a lot about generative AI from today's conversation. I've certainly learned a lot more about what Compunnel is doing. I appreciate it. I'm sure our audience will also appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Supriya.
Thank you.